Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and patch 7.38b just dropped. It was pretty obvious they were going to do some kind of B patch here in a week or two after the 7.38 patch, because there was some stuff that was kind of broken. I mean, they actually dropped like a secret little fix patch that made Dragon Knight not completely broken because he was actually glitched and doing double damage, but it was pretty obvious they were going to do something like this and just nerf all those strong things since they changed so much. So we're going to go through all the updates here and just highlight the big things that they changed. So starting off with general updates, they changed that item swapping from your backpack to your inventory from 3 to 5 seconds, which is good because I swear every time I did it, it was still on cooldown. So I must have never done it in the 3-second window because, you know, I'm in a team fight or I'm like last hitting or doing something. So I'm just not thinking about the item getting delivered. And then I switch it over and it's probably just like 4 seconds or something. So it almost never happened to me. I don't even think it happened once where I got it in the timing window. So it makes sense. They extended it to 5 seconds. And then the Tormentor, they're kind of nerfing it here a bit because it's weird. If you play pubs, people still probably don't really go for the Tormentor as much. It's definitely way better than it was, but also in pro games, it's like insane. Like basically, I guess in pro games, if you get the Tormentor, you win like 70% of the time or 75% of the time. And that's a little bit too OP. And it's kind of one of those things where I feel like pubs just didn't catch up yet to understand how good the Tormentor was. And people would do it here and there, but just not very often. But it was insanely good. It was a lot harder to take down, but now they're just making it so the benefits of taking it aren't as insane. So that's definitely needed there. And then just some other small things about the Lotus cannot be picked up by Meepo clones and stuff like that. Moving the spawn box, just a weird little thing. But then removing a bunch of trees. I wouldn't usually comment on stuff like this, but it is kind of one of those things where they change the map and then there's all these new trees and you have to like figure out where to cut things or where to cut stuff to camps to try to pull them, or all that different kind of stuff is happening. And I feel like there was a lot of different times, especially in those rivers, where I would cut a tree and it would feel like, oh, I should just be able to go get the camp. And then my guy would walk around. So I was like, okay, I guess that's actually not a path. It was a little bit awkward. So I think they just adjusted a bunch of that stuff there. So starting with item updates, we have Eye of Scotty, and they buffed this item. I don't think it was like the worst item overall, but it was a little bit awkward to buy and people didn't really feel like they needed it, so it wasn't getting purchased very much. So these buffs make sense, but it is one of those things where if they buff it too much and nerf too many of the other things, Eye of Scotty might be the best item in the patch and get bought all the time, like every game. So it's one of those things they have to be a little bit careful of that. I like Eye of Scotty just because I like playing Slark and some of these other heroes that like to buy it. So I like when it's a good item personally. And then Glimmer Cape, this item was a very good. You were even seeing it bought on cores, which is kind of awkward, but it was so good that people realized, oh, it's just a magic resistance item that gives you move speed and invis and can save you in certain situations. It was just so good that it makes sense that they're going to nerf it. I don't even know if this is enough. Maybe this is enough to nerf it out of like being a core item where you actually buy it on like a mid or an offlane or something like that, or even a carry. Like I saw carries going at like not your typical carry, but some like weird carry heroes would buy it. It's just not going to be like that anymore probably, but you will still probably see it on supports all the time. And then Heaven's Halberd, they just kind of changed it so it doesn't require Ring of Regen anymore, and that's basically because the buildup isn't as good now, where before you were having this insane buildup with all this regen. It was so good in that way. Obviously the base of Heaven's Halberd isn't changed in the sense of like once you complete it, it's still the same, but it's just that that buildup isn't as good. Then Conda, they destroyed this item in the last patch, so they're just buffing it a little bit here. I don't know if that's going to bring it back, but like it's a little bit better, I guess, for like Zeus and stuff. Orb of Corrosion, it's a little bit awkward because, so they decrease the agility by 1, but then they buff the slow and also buff the slow on Orb of Frost. So when I first saw Orb of Corrosion being changed, I'm like, okay, do they not know? Like, I don't even know. Do they think this is a nerf or do they think this is a buff? Because personally, I liked the changes that they did, and I thought Orb of Corrosion was being bought a lot more. So I was thinking, oh, maybe they want to nerf it when I first read this line. But then I'm like, wait, do they actually want to buff it? Like, I'm just confused. And it seems like they want to buff it, which I'm a little bit confused about because I thought this was a good item. Maybe I'm just wrong, completely delusional because I'm a carry player and I just like to get greedy and buy this item. I don't know, but I thought it was good, and this to me seems like a buff. Like 1 agility, whatever, dude. Like the slow is good, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just delusional. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but maybe you guys can correct me. But it seems like they buffed this and it was already good. I don't know. And then Orchid and Bloodthorn, They were amazing last patch. They nerfed them, but it seems like they want to kill this item. They're like, no, we didn't kill it enough. It needs to be gone, because it still was definitely good. Like, Orchid was still good, and then Bloodthorn wasn't as good, but it was still purchasable, and now it might be dead. I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, this isn't like a huge nerf, but it is decent enough that eventually, once you start nerfing it to the point where it's like, okay, yeah, this isn't really viable anymore. We'd rather buy something else. Like, eventually, once you get rid of this, you can go for Sheep or some other attack speed or damage item or regen item. Then neutral items, I'm not really going to talk about these very much. I just personally, if you've watched this channel or watched anything I've said, I hate neutral items. I don't think they belong in the game, really. They haven't figured out a good way to implement them. I don't think I'm not saying I hate this way, the thing that they did with this change. I don't mind it. It's just, again, when I've been playing, I play carry, let's say, I just go Orb of Destruction every time. Like, I just pick that, and then I pick the attack speed one. Like, I don't have to think about it. Like, I'm not going to pick anything else. I'm going to pick the good offensive one, and then I'm going to pick the attack speed or the damage or whatever. And then, like, if I'm a mana-starved off-lane or support hero, I'll pick this mana drought and, like, the magic resist or something, or cast range. Like, it's very obvious what you're going to go pretty much every time. You do have to think about it for a second, but, like, I don't know. I just don't like the whole idea. So that's just my personal, thoughts on the neutral items in general. So they're just buffing and changing and adjusting things, because like another one, Serrated Shiv, like if you saw this as a carry, you just picked it, and then you just picked like attack speed or damage. Like there's nothing to think about, really. You just pick the obvious one. Like sometimes Ninja Gear's fine, Mindbreaker's good, stuff like that, but still, like for the most part, it's not something you think about. You just pick the obvious one and then just go with it, and it's not that big of a deal. Then for hero updates, we have Abaddon, and this hero's getting nerfed across the board on a bunch of different numbers, on a bunch of his abilities. And honestly, people were asking me, why didn't you include this in your top 5 winners? And that's because he was so good in the patch before as a support. He was good now as a core and a support, but I didn't think that was enough to like put him over the edge in terms of like he was good and now he's good. So does that really count? I don't know, but he was one of the best heroes of the patch. So nerfing him across the board and a bunch of different numbers is definitely needed. Now, we'll have to see if this is enough to take him out of the meta. It's always hard to tell when they don't nerf something, super fundamental to the hero, like what it actually is very, very good at. It's not that these things aren't needed or damaging nerfs. It's just that it's hard to see if this is enough to take him out of the meta completely. Like, does it kill the hero across the board, or is it just good but not as good as it once was? It's always hard to tell with just number nerfs, but these are good kind of nerfs for a B patch, so I do like how they nerfed this hero overall. Then Alchemist, just gifting Ag Scepters no longer gives Spell Amp, which is interesting. That's kind of like a nerf to support Alch, I guess, which was that really a thing? I mean, people did pick it, don't get me wrong, but like, I don't know, and it's kind of interesting to have a support Alchemist in some cases, that like having that be viable is interesting. It also made the hero really good later in the game if you were a core Alchemist. I don't know that this is a nerf that was needed, but it is interesting they took that away. AA, this is just a joke. What's happening? Arc Warden, this is a change here where I don't even know what is going on with the hero, because some Arc Warden players I know think that the hero's dead, but then the win rate did kind of increase, so it's kind of hard to say. I mean, it is a very awkward, weird hero. It's hard for me to say what's going on since I'm not an Arc Warden player. Then we have Beastmaster, small nerfs there. Brewmaster buffs here because this hero was kind of dead. Broodmother, I don't think this hero was that great, but I think everybody agrees we love to see Broodmother nerfs no matter what. You don't want this hero to be broken and picked in your pubs. It's so annoying when you come across a good Broodmother player. Then we have Chen's small change. Darkseer was good, so they nerfed it a little bit. Dazzle, they did nerf this hero because it was getting picked a lot with this new ultimate and stuff of like leaving yourself in safety and causing chaos in the fights. I did like the concept though, and I do like the concept, so I hope this doesn't kill the hero completely, because I wasn't really even sure how good it was. Like, I saw it in pubs, don't get me wrong, and I saw it perform pretty well, but I think people were also like trying it out and seeing how good it was. And sometimes I feel like it can seem good at times, but then all you have to do is hunt down the Dazzle where he's actually at, and then if you can just find him, you just can kill him, and it's pretty easy. So, I don't know, it's hard for me to say. I like these kinds of concepts, and I don't like when they introduce them, and it's a little bit good, and then they just completely kill it. Like, that's not always the most fun thing. I like to see these new interesting things develop. I also like Dazzle as a core. I like these kind of supports that feel awkward becoming cores and kind of going away as a support. That I always like that. I don't know. I just feel like we often see all these cores becoming supports and just being like another core position from the 4 or 5. So I kind of like when the reverse happens too. So I hope Dazzle doesn't go away as a core at least. Then DK, much needed nerfs for this hero. This hero was the best hero of the patch, probably. I mean, he was definitely the best hero when he was broken before they introduced that kind of tiny change that you probably had to go to the website to see, where it was broken, it was doing like double damage, and then they kind of took that away. But now they even decreased the damage even more on the red fire dragon and the AoE. I don't know if this is enough to completely delete the hero, but that is a pretty significant damage nerf, especially for the Worm's Wraith attack damage. So this is one of those things where this hero just did more damage at like 15 minutes than any other hero in the game. Like, you would just turn to the fire dragon, you would just like run at people, and you would just hit them 3 times and they would die. So that's probably not going to happen as much anymore, but who knows if it's still a decent offlane, maybe not a carry, hard to say. I mean, I think when you initially looked at like what the last patch was, it was like, okay, the carry DK is dead, but then it turns out, nope, he's not dead. He's actually better than ever, and he's pretty much good at every single role, every core role. So we'll see what happens with these nerfs. Much needed though. Then Ember, small change, not a big deal. Hoodwink, small change, not a big deal. That's a nerf to Ember, a buff to Hoodwink. And then a nerf to Huskar. This hero was kind of coming back into the meta. It's another one that's like a cheese hero, like Brood. So whenever this hero starts to get good, it is nice to see a small nerf, because you don't want to hear, you don't want to see this being spammed in pubs all the time, because you always hear people like yelling and screaming about how Huskar is annoying and they hate this hero. And I get it. It is very annoying when you go up against a very good Huskar player. Then Invoker, they're buffing, because last patch, this was here a very annoying hero. I put it in the heroes that I wanted changed because I didn't like that it was just an insane right-click hero while also having all these annoying spells. So they shifted a bunch of the stuff, which I didn't even really go over in the patch notes, because it's like, I'm not an Invoker player. I don't really know what all of that means. You almost have to play it to figure out what happens to the hero. And it seems like, I guess it was nerfed a little bit too much. So they buffed it overall here. But again, another one of those where these number increases, does that make this hero viable? It's always hard to say until people actually get their hands on it and play it. Then we have Jakiro, another one of the heroes that was one of the best of the patch, if not the best support for sure. So they're nerfing this ice path across the board. This was the best facet you're going to pick pretty much every time, obviously with the double stun. And it was just too good. The amount of damage it was doing, the dewarding, the double stun, the duration of it, all those things. It was a very, very annoying hero to deal with. And it was so good for clearing waves and getting ags and just being a threat and annoying in general as a support. So the buffs were too much. This was much needed nerfs. We'll see if this kills the hero. I don't think this is enough to kill the hero completely. I mean, this isn't that big of a deal. It definitely needed nerfs, but this isn't huge. Like, I think it's still very, very good. Then Keeper of the Light was pretty bad, so they buffed it across the board here with a spirit form, but I don't know if that's enough to make it better or viable, I guess I would say. I mean, it can still be picked as a mid and can have some success, but we really haven't seen that be a staple of the meta for some time. Then Kez, they absolutely gutted this hero, like completely destroyed this hero in the last patch. I was seeing people that were big Kez players being like crying out, being like, why did you do this, Valve? And I kind of had the same, idea or sense of like, dude, why would you just completely destroy this hero? This is an interesting, cool carry hero, and now you just completely gutted it. So they're making it a little bit better, but I don't think this is really enough to bring it back. Like, it was such bad nerfs the last time that, I don't know, what was the win rate? Like 42%? Like, maybe this brings it up to 44? I don't know. Like, it probably increases it by a couple percent, but I don't think it's enough to make the hero viable. It's going to be dead until I think it gets some more nerfs. Unless I'm completely wrong and this crit is like really good. I think that's like the only thing I can see that would actually be the thing that makes this hero good, but I don't know. I mean, 50% to 100% seems decent, but I don't know. There was just so many nerfs, it was kind of insane. Leshrac was coming back into the meta a little bit, so it makes sense that they nerfed it here. This is kind of a buff, I believe, as well, which it's always one of those where when you see a facet buff, that doesn't necessarily mean that the facet or the hero itself is getting buffed. It might just be that they're buffing the facet that's really bad. Like, they're kind of buffing the other facet to see, okay, if we nerf this part of the hero and then we buff the facet, maybe people will start picking this other facet. Like, I think they're going to do that a lot of different times when you see one facet changed. Then Lifestealer, another one of the best heroes of the patch, probably the best carry unless you count DK. And this hero definitely needed nerfed. And the thing that was pretty broken on the hero that's getting nerfed the most is this HP gain from Flesh Feast and just Feast in general when you kill heroes. So I think that was a big part of why the hero was broken. You would get, like, later on in the game, 1500 extra HP just from killing heroes and killing creeps. It was kind of absurd how much HP you would get. And then the other huge thing, actually, is that Ag's Scepter no longer disarms. So really the bonus HP, yes, that was good, but I think you could still be a good hero without that. But Ags was a huge part of what the hero did. Now, yes, you didn't get that to like a 4th item, right? So it's not like you can't go for the same kind of items, but the fact that you don't disarm heroes, like you go infesting an enemy carry hero and now you can't really do anything, like they can't attack, they can't have impact in the fight very much, that was a huge part of the Ags. Yes, you do attack faster, which maybe counterbalances that a little bit, but I think that was a very, very important part of the hero. So we'll see if that completely kills the hero. It's hard to say. It's definitely not as broken as it once was, but even though the main thing is this HP increase, that's like kind of the focus, I think this disarming might actually be a bigger nerf overall. Then we have Lena. They gutted the hero, so they're just buffing it a little bit, which makes sense. Same thing with Lycan, just a small buff there. Magnus was extremely good, getting picked in a bunch of different roles as a carry and as an offlaner, so it makes sense that they're nerfing this hero a little bit, just with the farming and also with Skewer in general. Marcy was pretty good this patch. People were picking it as a support, but then also as a carry. Probably more as a support, I would think, and just kind of playing that carry from a support role, so it makes sense that Rebound is getting a little bit of a nerf there. And then Medusa, I'm surprised at this. I guess in the recent pro tournament, Medusa was picked a few times and had a very good win rate, but I mean, this is a small nerf, don't get me wrong, but I guess it was kind of coming back into the meta, so they nerfed it a little bit there. Not a huge deal, but a little bit of a nerf. Same thing with Meepo, was kind of getting some more play, so they nerfed it, small nerfs there. Mirana was a pretty good support. I had her in one of my, top 5 winners, so it makes sense that this blind, which was the main thing that made the hero good, makes sense that they're nerfing that a little bit as well. Monkey King, just a small change, not a big deal. Muerta, a small change. The calling, though, seems to be like getting nerfed into oblivion. I feel like every time they nerf this hero, they nerf the calling every single time, but no longer slows attack speed. Maybe this is enough to make Muerta 4 just completely gone. We'll have to see. That's the thing. I would rather them change Muerta to be a carry. I want this hero to be like a drow, not a 4 position. So I'm actually glad when they nerf that hero to not be a support, because I don't like to see it as a support. I like when there's more carry options in the pool. Then Nature's always a weird hero, because is it a support? Is it a carry? Is it, what even is this hero half the time? They're changing it a little bit. Ag Scepter no longer reduces cooldown by 25 seconds. That's pretty big. I don't know how great the hero was. Again, I looked at the recent pro tournament and it was getting some play and it did seem to have a decent win rate. I just never really saw it in my pubs personally, so I couldn't tell you how amazing it was or if it was really good, but clearly they thought it was decent. The win rates probably showed that, so they needed to nerf it a little bit. Night Stalker, another hero that probably benefited the most from the patch, in the sense that he was actually still pretty good last patch, but just with a bunch of other things getting nerfed and the changes benefiting him, he was pretty good. I saw it picked in a lot of pubs, so it makes sense they're nerfing Night Rain here, but then they are buffing Voidbringer, and personally, I actually think Voidbringer might be better overall. I think people are kind of underestimating how good this facet is, but people just don't pick it very much, I think. So then they're thinking, it's not great, but it might be one of those things where they nerf this and then they say, oh wait, Voidbringer's actually insane, so this hero's still good and actually even better with this facet. That's just my personal opinion though. Who knows, maybe that's not true at all. NPL, dead hero, which is still dead, and 1% dead hero being dead. Then Primal Beast, we have a buff to Provoked Beast and a nerf to Ferocity. This is obvious. Whenever they do this, it's just because it's unbalanced how much people are picking the one over the other, and they kind of want to shift those things. Spectre was one of those heroes that got pretty heavily nerfed in the last patch. She kind of does the same thing that she did before, but just not nearly as good. People still aren't picking Forsaken, so they're like, okay, please try to pick this for once, guys. Like, can you please pick it now? It's 2 times the damage multiplier. Like, can you please do this? And people probably still won't. Maybe they will, who knows. Maybe it's another thing like with the Night Stalker that people realize, oh wait, Forsaken's actually broken at some point. That seems to happen sometimes, where they buff a thing on the hero and people are like, nah, I'm good, and they keep buffing it, and then people are like, wait, it's actually broken. That happens sometimes. Then Storm, like kind of a joke change, whatever. Tide was another very, very good hero. People that were actually picking both facets. The one was like more the tanky facet. The other one was more of like the carry Tide or the offensive facet. Both were viable. Like if you go to Dota 2 Pro Tracker, people are picking both facets, which is kind of crazy. That usually doesn't happen for most heroes, unless it's like one is a carry, one is a support facet, and they pick, either one, or like a core and a support. They pick it depending on the role, but you could pick it. You can pick both facets in the off lane and do well with both, so that's interesting. I think Dead in the Water actually was huge, because this is the thing I think that makes this hero actually viable, because for the longest time, obviously you have your slow with your Q, but you really only have the control of your ultimate. It's a long cooldown, it's a great ultimate, but it can get dodged by BKB and stuff like that. Now, with this Dead in the Water shard, you just have a great way of locking people down, and it's extremely annoying to deal with. So having this as just like the free way to lock people down without blowing your ultimate was so big. Now, this, don't get me wrong, it still does the same thing. The damage is not as good, and it costs more mana, and mana is huge for the hero, so I think that's a pretty big nerf. And then Anchor Smash, this reduction is actually huge as well, because this is a big thing in the lane, but also later in the game, where just like this amount of percentage reduction is big. So that is a big part of the hero, and why the hero can be so good in a lot of different situations where it feels like you just take no damage as a Tidehunter. So big nerfs to the hero. We'll see if that deletes the hero. Tiny, when you read it or you see it's just like one line, you're like, how big of a nerf is this? But this is a fairly significant nerf, because this hero is just known as being extremely tanky. Now, you still have a lot of HP, but at the max level of grow, that's 9 armor. That is very significant. Like 9 armor is a lot. Going from plus 24 to plus 15, I don't know. We'll have to see. And I personally played Tiny a little bit in this patch. I love Tiny carry in the sense that I wish I was good at it. I wish that it was good at most MMRs. I just feel like it's not. Like, I feel like you just, as a Tiny, you farm not as good as some of the other carries, but also sometimes you just run in, you hit people a bunch, and then your team does nothing. I don't know. And maybe just my problem with Tiny, maybe my personal problem. Like, but I feel like you rely on your team in some ways sometimes as Tiny. And so I could never really have the success with it that I want to have. Maybe I just don't conceptually understand it, but this might actually kill the hero in general. I certainly won't be picking it, because I'll probably still be picking Lifestealer or Slark or something like that. But we'll see if this is enough to get rid of it as a very good, like, pro high tier meta hero in general. Then we have Troll. This hero is, I think, at a decent spot. It's just one of those, I've always said it will never be good as long as you can't control yourself under your ultimate. And it's just kind of right on the cusp of being okay, but still not that great. They did nerf it a little bit, which I don't even know if that was really warranted that much, but it's not a huge nerf. It's just that when you have your shard and you're attacking things like buildings, you don't attack other stuff, which is like kind of whatever. I mean, don't get me wrong, that was good to have, but it's like, Then Tusk, small buffed drinking buddies, whatever. The slow for Venomous Gale is not as good early, which is very good for everybody, because it's the most annoying level 1 like rune contest spell in the world. So I'm actually happy about that. Visage, go away Visage. Nobody wants you here. Nobody likes you. Everybody hates you. Everyone talks about you behind your back and gossips all the time. Go away, please. Warlock, small nerf, not a huge deal, I feel like. I mean, obviously having that XP is interesting, but like whatever. Weaver, I actually thought this hero was somewhat viable, so it's interesting that they are buffing it, at least that's what I think. Am I like high, or is the attack interval, actually no, this is a nerf, right? Because the interval goes from 0.7 to 0.75, so it's attacking less. Let me know what you think in the comments if that's what that actually means. I'm pretty sure that's what that means. But yeah, I thought this hero was pretty viable, so that makes sense. Then Wind Ranger, small buffs, but again, what is that really going to do much? Another one of those universal heroes that they kind of adjusted stuff with, so it's hard to say where this hero sits, but I don't think it was very good. Then Winter Wyvern, this hero was kind of broken with the recursive facet, because you would curse a hero, they would die, and then like another hero would be cursed, and you could just do like infinite damage and just like kill everybody. It was kind of insane. So they're switching it a little bit, where now this doesn't amp any of the damage, but now the curse targets by default can take damage again. So they kind of switched that up in the last patch, and now they're kind of reverting it almost back to the way it was before in a way. I mean, this thing still does that, like switching to other heroes, but it's just not as broken as it was. And actually, when I made the top 5 winners and losers, I didn't know this was a part of the patch. Like, I didn't really know this was a thing that was broken that people were playing that was kind of insane. And I think it just kind of was one of those that people discovered it and, oh wait, this is really good. But even so, I didn't see very many Winter Wyverns in my pubs, but I also saw some of those like clips of people, you know, using the ability to just make the throne immune to damage, so it just like doesn't die. It was just pretty funny too. But anyway, that's Winter Wyvern. And then lastly, we have Zeus. This hero was pretty decent. I feel like, is it just me, or does Zeus like always get nerfed? I feel like Zeus is one of those heroes that he's been nerfed like 5 years in a row. Like, he's like never gotten a buff. Like, they change him a little bit. They give him like the shard and do some of these other things, and they gave him like the jump, they gave him the shard. They did a little bit of tweaks like few years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was. And then since then, he's just been like nerfed. I feel like that just keeps happening because people were like, nope, I'm still picking Zeus. I'm still picking Zeus 4. I don't care what you say. I'm going for Ag's Refresher. Like, shut up. You doesn't, like, I don't really care what the nerf is. I'm still 1k MMR, and I'm still doing it. Even in my MMR, they still do it, so I don't know. That's probably why they keep nerfing this hero, because everyone just keeps picking it. It's like Pudge, where, like, no matter what, people like Zeus, they're going to keep picking it, so... That is the patch 7.38B, and let me know what you guys think about this patch. I think it was a pretty good B patch. It makes sense. They nerfed pretty much everything that needed nerfed for the most part. I can't really think of anything that was broken that they didn't touch. They buffed some things that were terrible, but not really that much. Like, oh, PL 1%, like whatever. That's not going to do very much at all. But yeah, I think this was a much needed patch, pretty good patch. I don't think it's going to shift the meta like insanely, like it's not going to make a crazy drastic shift, but it's always hard to say, because if some of those really, really powerful things like DK, Lifestealer, that kind of stuff, if they come out of the meta, or even like Tiny, then it makes other things kind of, you know, be good in the meta, like other carries, and then that makes other offlanes be good now. And like, so even small shifts like this can just drastically change what's good in the patch, even though it doesn't seem like it at first. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think about the video. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all those kinds of things. Don't forget to request coaching if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.